All right, we're getting close to time that we had decided to start. So again, my name is Beth Gaines, and I'm the I'm the communications coordinator. And this evening, our commercial marketing team is going to be visiting with you and sharing some data from what they have seen this past year as they've traveled sales across the country, and kind of give you a little bit of an insight to those things. Harold, Bertz, Gary Fike, and Katie Ochsner, if you'll add your video to the screen at the moment, that would be great. We are recording tonight's session so that we'll make that available to folks that maybe couldn't participate in our event tonight due to a busy time of year. We realize that. So we appreciate everybody there. We've got quite a few folks on the line with us tonight, and we appreciate that. Again, I mentioned it that I've got everybody muted so we can have a really strong audio quality. So if you've got a question to ask as things go along, I ask that you either use the chat box that's available through the Ring Central platform, and you can send that to me privately. Again, I'm Beth Gaines, or you can email that to me at beth@redangus.org, and we'll be sharing those at the end of the presentations. We are going to, the guys and gals, Katie, are going to cover quite a bit of ground. So we do want to kind of keep our questions and our conversation to the topic at hand this evening. We're going to try to keep this to about an hour. So if you've got questions about what they've presented or information that you'd like to have some clarification on, feel free to send those questions in, but let's try to keep the conversation focused here on the sales season that we've had it. Again, all the contact information for the commercial marketing team is available on the website. So after tonight, if you realize that you've got a question that you'd like to visit with Gary, Harold, or Katie about, feel free to do that as well. They'll be glad to visit with you. So with that, Gary, are you ready to get this underway?
I am totally ready. Thank you, Beth.
All right, hang on just a second and let me share this, get the PowerPoints going. And give you control of my screen. Maybe. And there, we should be off and running now. See if you can run my screen, Gary.
Okay, well, it looks like I've got control right now, so we'll go with that. I would like to, along with Beth and the rest of the crew, welcome everyone for attending tonight, whether you're on audio only or on the video conference. We think we've got a lot of good information to share with participants tonight. And I would like to thank all of the marketing staff for the tremendous amount of work they did this past spring sales season from January through the middle of May. Everyone was truly road warriors, and that would include Chezzy and Beth as well, because they attended a number of sales. And I would venture to say that we probably attended more Red Angus sales by staff members than has ever been done in the past. And the only reason I really say that is I think there's more Red Angus sales available than there were even 15 or 20 years ago. So that's one thing. But the other thing is folks have made a real commitment to Red Angus marketing staff by including us, and we thank you for hosting us at your sales and allowing us a few minutes on the program to speak about the marketing programs that are available to everyone out there and all of your bulk customers. So with that, I will go ahead and jump into the data with the overarching numbers, and now we'll see if the technology works. I am clicking on to the next slide. Trying to. There we go. So the overarching summary of the bull sale season this past spring was that staff members attended 78 sales this past spring from that mid-January to mid-May, traveling thousands of miles and staying in dozens of hotel rooms. And there's a lot of interesting stories just that will be covered maybe another time in another venue, but it was an exciting season. And we recorded most all of this data on a spreadsheet that Katie had set up. So we not only included individual price, but a number of other factors that you're going to see and how those factors affected the sale price of bulls this past spring. So you're going to see a lot of interesting numbers out there. But again, the overarching thing is the bull price, the average sale price of a bull this spring was $4,533. Now, compared to last year, that is down 20%. Last year, we averaged about $56.95, and 2 years ago, we averaged just over $7,000. So that's really no surprise, given what the beef and cattle market has done over the course of the past 2 years. Everyone knows that calf prices are lower. Other breeds have seen similar drops in the prices, but the average price, again, was $4,533. If you look at the average number of bulls sold per sale, it was 76, and I don't know why my slide went forward, but 76 head of bulls average per sale, and that ranged all the way from 15 to as much as 300 or more. So there was a wide range, but that was our average number. If we broke the bull sale price down by quartiles, in other words, we broke them down by 25% increments, the top 25% of bulls at sale this spring averaged $5,572, while the bottom 25% averaged just under $3,700. So that's about an $1,800 difference from top to bottom, or $1,900 actually. And there's about an $800 spread, high sevens between the first and the second quartiles, and less so as we move on down the scale. But that's not surprising, given the top quartile would include a lot more outliers in terms of the higher priced bulls that sold. But that's kind of what the profile looks like of those sale prices this spring. As we looked at a number of different things, we wanted to compare those that seemed most intuitive to affecting sale price. We looked at a number of different things. First of all, we looked at the herd builder and gridmaster indices. So if you look at those same four quartiles of price ranges of bull sales this past spring, the average herd builder EPD for the top quartile was 160. Now, the breed average is 94, 50th percentile, so it's quite a bit above. And you saw a gradual drop in the herd builder index all the way down to the bottom quartile, which was below breed average at about 75 or 76. 123 is breed average for non-parent sires under 2 years of age. So the second quartile was kind of in the range for the 50%. I'm sorry, I said 94 earlier. That was right. So I was still above the breed average by quite a bit, and as well as the third quartile. But when you looked at Gridmaster, you saw less evidence of a change according to the price in bulls, and that has a great deal to do with the range in Gridmaster scores. You know, basically they're going to be from 45 to 55. They all averaged around 49 to 50. So no great differences there that we really saw in that particular index. I find it interesting that so many people will tell me that the reason that they buy bulls in general is to add pounds to their calf crop in terms of weaning weight, because the vast majority of ranchers will sell their bulls at or shortly after weaning, or maybe after a brief backgrounding period. But there was really no difference in price between either yearling weight or weaning weight EPDs in the data that we have from the bull sales attended this year. And again, this is 78 bull sales, so we got a pretty good number here, but there really wasn't much difference there. Now, if you take a look at that 62 to 64 figure for weaning weight, that would find itself in the upper 30 to 35% for breed average, and the same way for the yearling weight. So they are good numbers there in terms of that, but we didn't really see any drop off as we progressed from higher priced bulls to less expensive bulls. Calving ease and birth weight continued to be a big price mover, or a price factor rather. When you looked at calving ease direct EPD, those in the top quartile scored an average of 11, or had an 11 for an EPD in calving ease direct, which would be in the top 1% of the breed for non-parent sires under 2 years of age. Those that were in the bottom quartile only averaged a calving ease, and that goes hand in hand with the birth weight EPD that you see here on this next slide. The top quartile of bulls in terms of price fetched was about 3.7, minus 3.7, and progressed all the way down to minus 0.3 for birth weight EPD. So we definitely saw a trend there in calving ease sires. Probably no surprise to anyone. Another number of these bulls would be turned out on heifers, and just trying to find the most fault-free and less labor-intensive sires to use in large operations in particular. Moving on to carcass traits, we looked at marbling and ribeye area EPD, and here we saw a definite trend with the top 25% of bulls, and actually the second quartile as well, averaging near 0.6, which is well above breed average, and would be in that top 20 to 25% of the breed for marbling. When we got down to the bottom quartile, marbling again was probably less emphasized or not used as a price factor because the breed average is about 0.35, 37, so about right at breed average, but certainly below the higher priced bulls. When we examined ribeye area EPD, they were pretty similar for the top three quartiles, but dropped off a little bit on ribeye area for that bottom quartile, and still at 0.15, that was just a tiny bit above breed average. So we're still offering a lot of really good genetics out there, but we definitely are seeing some trends in terms of these factors that we've looked at. As Beth has said, we will take questions later on, so either submit them via email or text, and we can discuss questions at the end as well. But right now, I'm going to transition on over to Katie Ochsner. Katie is our marketing specialist. She attended a number of bull sales, about a third of the ones that were attended by staff. She put together an excellent presentation here on some of the things that she derived from the spreadsheet in which we tracked a number of different factors. So with that, I will get off of here and turn it over to Katie. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and hang on just a second, Katie, and let me get you control of the screen momentarily. Gary, while I'm doing that, can you tell me how many bull sales, Red Angus bull sales there are in the United States?
No, I can't exactly. I think this spring there would have been in the neighborhood of 90. So we attended 78 of approximately 90 sales. Harold may have a better answer on that, but there were a few that we missed, and we're never probably going to get to 100% of them just because of logistics and getting people traveled around, but we'll talk about that some more probably at the end of tonight's presentation, and talk about some of those other factors that affect staff and ability to get to sales.
Very good. And Katie, it is not wanting me to let it share remote control. So well, there we go. It's going to let me do it now.
All right.
And before you get carried away, for those folks that are only joining by phone, if you have an interest or can get to a computer, there is a PDF of these slides now available that's on the front website or the front page of the redangus.org website. So you can refer to those as we go through and have those to go later, but just so you know, that document is available for you to have at this point. So Katie, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Gary. And the first slide that I'm going to present follows up what Gary was discussing pretty well. So what we did was each of us collected and recorded data at the bull sales that we were able to attend. So we recorded the registration numbers and the prices of each one of those bulls, which then allowed us to pull the index values and the EPDs on those bulls and calculate the correlation between the price and each of those index and EPD traits. And as you noticed in the charts that Gary was presenting, Herd Builder and Gridmaster had the highest correlation with those prices. Gridmaster had a 0.26 correlation with sale price, and Herd Builder had a 0.21 correlation. And to me, this isn't necessarily surprising, considering that these two indices include a multitude of traits that are designed to help producers meet their specific breeding objectives, either in a terminal objective with Gridmaster or in a maternal objective with Herd Builder. The other traits that had a fairly high correlation were calving ease direct, which Gary had shown. And again, not surprising, because I know that the other marketing staff that had traveled throughout the year would reiterate that there was a lot of people at those bull sales that were looking for calving ease bulls and bulls that they could use on heifers. The other maternal trait that kind of had a high correlation was stability at 0.14. And again, I wasn't necessarily surprised with this, because we want to retain those females in the herd for an extended period of time. Some of the more terminally oriented traits that had a high correlation was yearling weight at 0.17 and then marbling at 0.14. So these were the traits that bull buyers overall put the most emphasis on. And another thing I'd like to point out on this slide is that some of these correlations are negative. That would be birth weight and maintenance energy. And the reason for that is because obviously the lower birth weight the bull, the more he's desired by the bull buyers and the more money that he'll bring at the sale. So the next slide that I've got for you here, we broke all of our information that we had collected at the bull sales down by region. And so you'll notice that the region that had the highest volume of bulls sold was the Great Plains region, which would consist of Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma. And this still had a pretty high average, as well as having high volume, with the second highest average on the bulls sold there. The next highest volume of bulls sold was in the Northern Plains region, which would include the Dakotas as well as Minnesota, and that was closely followed by the Montana region. And you'll notice that the Rocky Mountain region didn't have a high volume of bulls sold. 429 head were sold in that region, which consists of Wyoming, Colorado, and Utah. But this did have the highest average at $6,199. And I'll also point out, obviously this map is not all inclusive of all the bull sales held in the United States. This was only the sales that we were able to attend as the marketing staff. But it's still pretty indicative, because we did get to the majority of the sales. And you'll notice that there was not a whole lot of bulls sold in the Southwest, Southeast, or Northeast region. And to me, this just shows that there's a lot of market opportunity available in these states, because there's still commercial herds in these areas and potential for seed stock producers to start selling more bulls in those areas. Next, I broke down the kind of regional map just into states, and we did attend sales in 18 different states as a marketing staff, and the majority of those sales were in Montana. We attended 14 sales in Montana and watched 1,431 head sell up there, averaging $4,605. The next highest state as far as the volume of bulls sold was Nebraska. We attended 13 sales in Nebraska. There was 883 head there, and those averaged $4,692. South Dakota ranked third in terms of the volume of bulls sold. North Dakota was fourth, Kansas was fifth, and Wyoming was sixth. However, you will notice that Wyoming did have the highest average of any state at $6,905. So next, I kind of broke down into some factors that we thought might influence the cell average and have an effect on kind of the success of a cell. As many of you seed stock producers know, there is a multitude of factors that could affect the success of your cell on cell day and the cell average that you do attain. But we thought it was interesting, and we collected this data throughout cell season. And so the first factor that I evaluated was the cell facility where you hold your cell. Many producers opt to hold the cell on their ranch. Some do a local cell barn. And there was another category that I did that included feedlots, development centers, fairgrounds, and hotels. And so I found that the cell average was the highest on cells that were held on the ranch. And these cells, sorry, we got our slides messed up somehow here.
Oh, sorry.
All right, there we go. So the cells on the ranch average $4,325. Cells that were held in a cell barn averaged $3,833, and then cells at other locations averaged $3,591. I'm not sure if I'm doing that or if what's happening with the screen. Sorry about that. So obviously another factor that can affect your cell is the weather, and unfortunately we have little to no control of this, but we always hear producers talking about the weather on cell day and how it does affect. So we, obviously this is a very subjective score. As a marketing staff, we just assigned each cell that we went to as having nice weather or bad weather on that day, and found that obviously it did have an impact. On cells where there was nice weather on that day, they averaged $4,264. And on cells where the weather was not so good and we ranked it bad, those averaged $3,835. And with technology becoming more prevalent and having more of an impact in our industry, I did a little bit of analysis on that. So the first chart that you'll see in the upper left corner there is whether the cell was, whether the bulls were run through the ring on cell day or whether they were simply shown on a video during the cell. And there's a number of different reasons why producers choose to do one or another. Some buyers like to see the bulls run through the ring in order to evaluate their disposition and how they act in that scenario. But other producers choose to show their bulls on a video on cell day. For one thing, it kind of helps the cell to run more quickly and also is a little bit less stressful on those bulls. I was interested to find that the cells we attended, which showed the bulls on a video, actually averaged a little bit higher, and those cells averaged $4,154, and cells where the bulls were run through the ring averaged $4,017. Online bidding is becoming a much bigger thing in our industry. And I think that commercial producers are becoming more trusting of the seed stock producers to kind of give them evaluation of the bulls. Plus, the quality of videos is going up, allowing the commercial producers to see the bulls better, even if they're not there in person. And so a lot of producers are opting to stay at home and work for the day rather than travel to a bull cell. So we're seeing online bidding becoming a lot more popular. For cells that offered two different online bidding options, they actually had the highest cell average at $4,318. The majority of cells that we attended did offer one online bidding option, and those averaged $4,181. And cells that offered no online bidding took a little bit of a hit economically, and those averaged just $3,225. We all know that hospitality affects the cell and the likelihood of commercial producers to attend that cell. And so it's kind of become very common for people to offer a lunch right before the cell. And so that wasn't necessarily included in this analysis. But what I did was evaluated any extra hospitality or that which was above and beyond. And that would include a pre-cell dinner, a pre-cell educational event, or some kind of happy hour, or also a dinner following the cell. So bull cells that we attended, which offered that extra above and beyond hospitality, averaged $4,651. And those sales that didn't have any other special event aside from the sale day lunch averaged $3,761. So we see that hospitality really did have a large influence on the average sale price of those bull sales. Another factor, obviously, is the catalog, and I know that seed stock producers put a large amount of time and resources into making a catalog, so we want to make sure that those catalogs are doing the most for you and really making sure that you have the most successful sale possible. So this was a very simple analysis comparing a full color catalog to a black and white catalog, and we saw that sales which offered a full color catalog averaged slightly higher at $4,169, and then black and white interior catalogs averaged $3,927. And the final couple analysis that we did was whether or not an insurance rep was available and present at your sale. So we found that for sales where there was an insurance rep available, those averaged a little bit higher at $4,254. And sales that had no insurance rep present averaged $4,137. As many of you know, seed stock producers are now able to be a partner for Top Dollar Angus, and this allows them to place the Top Dollar Angus logo in their catalog for those bulls that would help commercial producers qualify for the Top Dollar Angus program. So I evaluated seed stock producers who were a seed stock partner versus those that weren't. And for sales where the seed stock producer was a seed partner in Top Dollar Angus, those sales averaged $4,320. And for those that weren't, the average was $4,043. So overall, I thought it was a really interesting analysis of all the factors that could affect your sale. And obviously that wouldn't be all of them because there's so many things that play into having a successful bull sale. But hopefully you found that as interesting as I did. And with that, I will be turning it over to Harold. Again, if you have questions, please submit those to Beth either through her email or cell phone, or you can also chat if you're online with Ring Central for us. So thank you.
All right, Harold. I think you have control of my mouse now. But can we hear you?
I do.
All right.
I think I've got it. We're good to go.
Very good.
Well, thanks all. I certainly appreciate it and have enjoyed visiting with all of you this year as we've traveled around to these bull sales. Katie and Gary have covered some of the more quantitative stuff with some of the data that we've put together. I'm going to hit a little bit more of the subjective things, the things that we kind of got a feel for as we traveled, and understand that this is a pretty wide-reaching thing because we went to a lot of states and a lot of different environments and looked at a lot of different kinds and shapes and sizes of bulls, but just some of the things that we kind of saw phenotypically that stood out to us. I wanted to start with that in our opinion, the Red Angus remains the rancher's choice in herd bulls. You know, that ranch-tested, rancher-trusted certainly rings true. The commercial cattlemen that we visited with certainly indicated to us that they buy our bulls because they enhance their bottom line. They make them more money. So those convenience traits that you folks work so hard to provide to them, they are definitely noticing and they're paying attention. And I think that's why we've certainly seen an uptake in market share just because of that. I wrote on there EPDs and phenotype continue to trend upwards. I think that Gary touched on some of those things as we saw, but every year it amazes me that as I go around to these bull sales, the bulls just get better. And that's exciting. The phenotype gets better. They have the EPDs that your customers are striving for, the ones that they want. So congratulations to you on that. And then, as Gary mentioned, also the number of sales and the sale attendance continues to climb. We had more bull sales, I believe, this year than ever before. And the attendance at those sales, we're putting more bulls on the market, but we have more people there to get them. So I think that that's a positive. And they, again, go back to enhancing their bottom line. They realize that, and that's why they're coming to our sales. With all of that, there are some challenges, though. There were some things that we noticed that maybe we need to keep our eyes open to and keep watching. Katie helped me put these slides together, and she put a quote down there that excellence is not a destination, it is a continuous journey that never ends. And I think we'd all of us in the seed stock business would certainly agree with that little statement, that it never stops. You constantly are striving for the next step. So I think we do have some work to do, and we saw some general overriding things, and understand that this is a wide area. I mean, you know, as I think Gary mentioned, we were in 18 states. I went to 11 different states and looked at bulls myself. So you're just getting kind of a general overview of things we saw. But first and foremost was the feet, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but we have some work to do on feet. And this is probably well, it is absolutely the minority of bulls. The majority of bulls we saw were problem-free or had differences, but no major flaws. This is the minority, but things I think we really need to keep our attention turned towards. Disposition is one thing that we heard commercial ranchers talking about a lot. I think we would all agree that our commercial ranching population is not getting any younger, and if they're like me, they're certainly not getting any faster. So disposition has become way up there on their list of things that they're looking at. When they call Gary or Katie or I and ask us to look at bulls for them, that's definitely one of the things that they are interested in, is how did that bull act? How do you act when you got him off by himself? You know, just general disposition things. And I also realize that a little disposition is necessary, because I do, after visiting with a lot of these ranchers, our Red Angus bulls get turned out with probably as many cows as any breed type in the industry. And that's because they can cover them. And I think that takes a certain amount of spark, but I do think that disposition is something we need to keep certainly on our radar. Size is the next thing I listed, and I think that we've pushed the envelope to increase the performance of these cattle, to increase ribeye, and with that we've increased in size. And one thing that we've heard from ranchers is that, you know, they are pretty happy with where their cow size is. There are still a few that are looking to increase, but most of them have kind of found their comfort zone, and in some cases are actually putting a cap on where they want growth traits to be, to sort of limit that size. So I think that's something that we need to be aware of, but yet we still have to, as we saw in those slides previous, performance is still an issue, and it is still something that they will pay for. One that I have next, masculinity, is one that could have maybe been a little higher up on the list. We didn't see it in a lot of bulls, but there were a series of bulls that I think maybe due to a little bit later maturity pattern are starting to maybe not be quite as masculine as some of the bulls that we had seen previously, or some of the other bulls even in a particular sale or compared to the breed. And by masculinity, I'm talking about more through the head, neck, and crest, just their overall look of masculinity that we see. We probably need to keep our eyes on that as we move forward. That was something that in some cases I'd never really noticed before, but I'd also heard several commercial customers visiting about that same thing, so I know that it's on their radar as well. The last one, and this one's nearly impossible to trace. I understand that it's really tough because it never happens consistently, but the white behind the navel, there certainly are areas of the country where they won't buy bulls that have that, and we probably saw as many bulls with white spots behind their navel as we have, or I have, since I've been at Red Angus. So something that we need to keep our eye on, and again, I understand that it's a tough trait to move, but we do need to keep our eyes on that. Back to the feet, primarily the majority of bulls that we see are on target. We see good feet. These bulls have properly shaped hooves. They have hooves that are deep enough. They have deep heels. They get around well, and the feet are, traditionally, it's just not an issue. But we do occasionally run into some cattle that that are missing the mark, maybe have some issues, and we may be selling some bulls that are going to be problematic down the road for those folks buying them. So we do need to be aware of it. To just start thinking about utilizing that as a culling criteria, looking at it to figure out what our threshold is. You guys know better than I what works in your environment and what your customers want and what they're willing to accept. And so I do think it's an important thing that we continue to watch. One thing that when we got together, we talked about a few things that may concern us, but we also talked about things that we saw that we felt we were bullseye targeted on. And so continuing the success, the body condition this year, I guess I probably saw fewer obese bulls and fewer thin bulls than I've ever seen. These bulls were ready to work. They were in good shape. And I think Katie and Gary, we all agreed that the bulls, by and large, were in the right body condition. And I definitely heard commercial customers talking about that, definitely talking about how the bulls looked harder and more ready to get out and cover country, but yet still had enough condition on them that they could discover differences. Testicle size and shape every year continues to amaze me. It is extremely rare that we have a customer or a bull customer call us and have us look at bulls that's an issue. You guys are extremely critical of that, and we appreciate that because that leads to so many successful things in the industry. Balanced EPDs and kind of, they've covered a lot of that on what we've saw that drove EPD price. What I'm talking about is, as I look at other breeds and do sorts of a particular breed or sale and use pretty stringent EPD criteria, it's a relatively small number of bulls that comes up. And I can use those same criteria on a Red Angus bull sale and a lot of them, and I get a lot of bulls. And I think your customers really appreciate that they have a lot of options when they're picking bulls, and they're able to definitely get what they need to move the needle of their program the direction they want. Focus on customers. Katie talked a lot about hospitality and mentioned some of those things that we saw, and we do appreciate your hospitality. And I don't know, we probably ought to do some kind of a metric on how much weight I put on during a bull sale season just because of the wonderful desserts that you folks put out there. That's my favorite. But beyond is your ability to listen to your customer and change what you're making or make more of what they want. And they're telling you a story when they spend their dollar. And I would encourage you, we did metrics on different traits and what it did to bull values. I would encourage that to do that on an individual basis in your own program and look and see what your customers are telling you, what they're willing.
Harold, did we lose you? I think Harold may have froze up. The technology is really good. He was winding up things, saying a lot of good things there. So at this point in time, Gary, if you can join us, if you can turn your, oh, there's somebody. Gary, can you get your video back on?
Yes, I'm clicking the button.
Awesome.
I should be on momentarily. I know everybody's waiting with bated breath to see my face, but the technology is being very slow right now, and it's not allowing me to come on. There we go.
There you are.
Yep.
So I'll pass it back to you for some closing comments there, Gary.
Sure. I think one of the things we've talked about a number of times, and you won't always find a black and white kind of what sale policy is about attending sales. That this is something that we have a discussion on annually. And can we move to the next slide? There we go. So I think there's a little bit of confusion sometimes on the part of everyone, including staff, on whether someone, a seed stock producer, would like someone attending their sale. Many of you contact Tracy Keister perhaps and get it on the website. And then we have some kind of a calendar so we can look at, generally in Denver for the stock show and for board meeting. That's when we will start sorting through the sales that are on there. But we really ask that you either make a call or tell Tracy that you're planning, you would like for someone to be there. If no request is made to have a staff member there, and some people may not care to have a staff member there, and that's okay too. But if you really want a staff member there, either call one of us or the national office and let us know that you would like someone to be there, and we will make every effort to do that. We would ask, and I think almost everyone cooperated with us in this regard, is that we would like to have at least a few minutes on the sale, a pre-sale, just to make a few comments about the Yellow Tag program, about Allied Access, about Red Navigator, and other marketing programs that we have. Besides the recognition, it's nice for the people to be able to market some of the marketing programs to your customers. So that's important. The other thing is, if you have a pre-sale meeting, and some people do that, maybe have a dinner the night before a sale and have a short program, we'd certainly be glad and welcome the opportunity to speak at an event like that. If you have something post-sale, that would be great if it works into the whole schedule of things. Oftentimes, as soon as the sale's over, depending on the string that we're on and where we're going and travel arrangements, we may not be able to stay, and we may not be able to be there the night before, but we'll try if you have something, particularly if you give us the opportunity to say a few words. We got to nearly all of the sales this past spring, as I mentioned earlier. We will never get to 100%. We would love to. If we didn't get to your sale in 2017, we will make every effort to get there in 2018. You know, it's, and I'll cover this here in just a bit, but sometimes the logistics of travel, and even with 3 people on the road all at the same time, it's difficult sometimes to make that work, but we're doing the best that we can, so I hope you'll recognize that. And particularly Easter is a moving target. That's a holiday, and if you're like most people, they like to spend that holiday with their families, so we have not the last couple of years, typically, because there's always sales around Easter time, and we like to be able to try to avoid that. I think next year Easter is on April 1st, so it will be, of course, a moving target to hit all the time. Beth, can you forward to the next slide? My clicker's not working.
Nope, I didn't give you control back.
Okay. Okay. The other thing to consider are, if you change your sale date, you know, if you've been, let's just say the second Tuesday of March for the last 30 years, that's great. Most people aren't going to change from that, but often a sale date gets moved and then nobody notifies us until maybe it's too late, or travel arrangements or other agreements have been made. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult to try to make those things come happen. So, you know, that's another logistic matter. If you are in a remote location, and that means, like, if you're in Mars and the rest of us are, you know, on Earth, and your sale is 1,000 miles away from the last sale or not in line, you have to recognize the cost of attending that sale goes way up. And again, we'll make every effort to be there, but it's best if we can tie them all up and make a route or a circuit, or get somebody there who's the closest to you physically. We're scattered out. Harold lives in Missouri. I live in Kansas. Katie lives in Wyoming. So we are kind of spread out pretty well, but we have to kind of watch our travel budget, because we are limited into how much money we can spend, and we have to be careful with those dollars if we're going to be good stewards of the resources that we have. Another thing I would say is, if you ask us to attend again next year at the end of your sale this year, be sure and come back next year, Harold or Katie or Gary or Chezzy or Beth. That's great, and we love that, but it's probably not a bad idea to go ahead and contact us again the next year ahead of time, just to make sure. A lot of times we'll make mental notes, and sometimes we'll write something down, but it's probably not a bad idea just to make sure that we're there. And as Katie mentioned earlier, weather can be a factor, and it was this year in several instances, at least from my perspective on trips that I made. Snow and ice and some other things made delayed travel. Sometimes flights get canceled. Sometimes roads get closed. And so if we don't make it to your sale because of weather, obviously that's out of our control, but we will try to do the best we can to get someone there. So with that, Beth, I'll turn it back to you. If there's questions from the audience, if there's comments, let's try to address those now.
You bet. And I will, I've got the chat box open. So if you've got a burning question that you would like to ask of the team, and here is one that's just come up, and I'll read it. And what is the percentage of the U.S. cattle herd has a Red Angus influence? Is that number growing? How much? And are these numbers broke down by region?
Well, I think that's a great question. And recently we found out that Red Angus is currently tied for third in terms of the number of registered cattle. So if you take that as an indication of the influence that it has in the industry, definitely that is way up from, several years ago. I think, Gary, I think you had told me this statistic, but like 20 years ago, we were ranked 13th and are now up to third. So I mean, that's a tremendous amount of growth, and I think that speaks volumes to the amount of influence and the growth that the breed has had. I guess I don't necessarily know that this is broken down in regions or where to find that information, but as a whole, across the nation, the influence is definitely growing.
What trends are you seeing, or are you seeing any trends this year versus past years in the buyers' wants and demands?
One of the things that I saw or heard was, there were probably more this year. The trend was there was more no sales, more bulls that walked than last year than what I observed. And I think part of that was the comments I heard were that they already had plenty of bulls and people simply weren't buying as many this year. So that was the comment that I got. But in terms of trends otherwise, the other ones seem to stay in place, and Harold and Katie can chime in on this, but trends still seem to be towards calving ease, towards herd builder and grid master index, those kinds of things, carcass traits obviously, but probably nothing brand new.
And Harold, I finally got you back on. I'm sorry I had you muted. So if you were dying to answer those questions and you couldn't come and you couldn't get through, I apologize. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I would concur with Gary that definitely the calving ease bulls are still in demand, and what we saw a lot of, and I think you guys would know this as well, the front end bulls they went after with the same vigor they did the last couple of years. And like Gary said, they just weren't buying as many bulls, but they certainly had demand for the bulls they wanted.
Here's another question that's come in via text. Is Red Angus becoming more or less competitive as compared to other breeds based on what you see in the country?
I would definitely say more competitive, and that kind of follows the comment that I made earlier about the growth of the influence of the breed. And just driving around like we do, you just see more Red Angus cattle across the country, and there's more demand for those genetics. And so I would certainly say there's more demand than there has been in the past.
I would follow up that comment, Katie, too, with you're seeing more red cattle, and we see that everywhere. But the number of calls that we've all received from people who are trying to expand their cow herds or grow they're switching to Red Angus as a female base, and we all know that Red Angus females are in high demand. Everybody wants them, it seems, by the volume of calls we get and the interest that's generated off of our web page and off of our stockyards page and so forth. It's been tremendous, the response there has been, and the numbers that we are seeing grow. It seems as if almost everybody wants a Red Angus cow or Red Angus heifer.
Harold, could you elaborate a little more on what you saw on frame size, growth, and muscle?
I think our cattle remain, I think since I've been working for Red Angus, the bulls are as thick and as stout as I've seen them. And, but I think what I've seen, and I'm just telling you what I hear a lot of the commercial producers say, is they're getting a little concerned with their mature cow size. And that's when that gets pretty regional. But the harsher the conditions, the more concerned they are, and they will tend to put a little bit more emphasis on capping a growth trait. But as far as the muscle and the development of these bulls, I think we're moving forward at a very rapid pace, and I don't know, what do you guys think, Gary and Katie?
Yeah, you know, the cow size deal is always an interesting question because it's so dependent on environment. Someone who's in eastern New Mexico is drastically different than someone who's in central or eastern Iowa or western Iowa even. It's just the availability of forage and resource and rainfall and all those kinds of things. You know, I've some people just aren't probably as concerned about frame size and so forth as others are. The other interesting thing that I'll interject is when people talk about moderation in the cow herd, I think that they generally are talking about frame score. And with some of the bigger, wider genetics, as Harold, you alluded to, that we're seeing, and I agree with you 100%. I think you're getting some really stout, thick, wide-based animals. You can have a 1,400-pound cow that's a frame score 5.5 and a 1,400-pound cow that's a frame score 7 or 8. I mean, it just depends on the rest of their makeup. So a cow is going to eat, you know, a certain percentage of her body weight, or that's her maximum intake. So I think moderation is, to me, it's more a combination of weight and frame score. But, you know, you can argue that point probably all day long.
Katie, this question's directed to you. The milk EPD showed a low correlation to the bull sale price. What does that really mean?
Well, milk is one of those traits that I think varies more than any other across operations. And that's probably why the correlation is so low, because some people, due to their environment, want to really limit milk, but others, you know, have enough feed and resources to where that milk is not an issue. So they'll go for a higher milk number. And so I guess the selection pressure that's being put on that trait by commercial producers varies so much that you don't see a strong correlation one way or the other, because some are selecting for low milk, some are selecting for high milk.
Very good. And Katie, while I've got you there on the center screen, talk to me a little bit about the interest that maybe we've seen in the Red Navigator test this spring by the commercial industry, and what you're making of that.
Yeah, we've had some really good uptake of the Red Navigator test, and I've actually been in charge of doing some follow-up calls with those tests. So if you do order one of those tests, you will receive a call from me, and I'll help you to navigate through those results, answer any questions that you might have about those. And so far, I've done on those follow-up calls, I've been able to ask some questions of the producers as to their experience with the test and what they've gained from it, and all of them have been really pleased. I mean, I really haven't had anybody tell me that they wish they never would have done it, because it's great to have that additional genetic information on those commercial females in order that you're not just putting genetic selection pressure on the sire side, but also on the female side, and can really help you make genetic progress a lot faster in those commercial herds.
And while we're on that female subject, what comments can you make, and this kind of goes back to the whole team, regarding the limited heifer offerings from this spring sales? What were you seeing in the female market?
Well,
go ahead, Harold.
I'll shoot on that one. Primarily, we saw commercial females, and I think the demand was steady. It continues to be we continue to be the preferred female of the industry. These females, I mean, we saw them sell anywhere from, at the very low end, like 1,100 all the way up to yearling heifers, commercial, bringing $1,700, $1,800, and then the purebred deal would vary even more. But the demand was extremely solid that I saw, and the females were outstanding. Katie, sorry I interrupted you.
No, go ahead. And I guess the way I interpreted the question, somebody was asking about the number of females offered. And, you know, I'm fairly new to this staff, and so I don't know comparatively to previous years how the number of females offered compares. But my guess would be that there is such a high demand for females that perhaps people have been selling in private treaty rather than offering them in their production cells because they're having, so many offers for those females, because we've seen over and over again that the demand for Red Angus females is extremely high and people aren't having trouble selling those.
And Katie, good comments. And Harold, I would also add that in the sales that I attended, I would not say that there was a more limited offering of females. But as Katie said, the demand's been very high. So maybe what you're seeing is that very thing, is that they're being offered private treaty. And the other thing that's interesting, that the odd twist to this is it's part of the supply and demand thing, is when everybody wants a heifer that is a yearling, that's a virgin that you want to get bred, when everybody wants one, nobody has them. And when everybody's got them, nobody wants them. So it kind of comes and goes. There's kind of a flex in there, and it's kind of hard to track that sometimes. All of a sudden, there's a bunch of them available, and then they go like that, and then nobody wants any for a long time. And then all of a sudden, there's a demand again, and nobody has any. But part of that is season of the year. Part of that, and I think the other thing is when we get down to negotiating price on that, it makes a big difference, because there's some people that, have a set amount in mind, and that's not what the market is. So you get into lots of different arguments on that point.
Very good. And I have another question here, and probably goes back to at least starting with Harold to answer this. You commented on feet and feet structure. How do we go about improving foot structure and our soundness of the cattle? How do we go about that?
I think a good first step is to score the feet on your cattle, and then score them at various times. I mean, it's, obviously you score them when you're picking replacements and picking your bulls that you're going to keep. And I don't know, there was an E-News article here a while back that I wrote that had kind of some pictures and they were drawings. So, I mean, it's not 100%, but I think like anything, if we have a scoring system in our selection criteria and do it numerous times throughout, and then begin to start to work towards that, I think we'll make real progress and slowly cull those ones that have foot issues. And it's a highly heritable trait, and I think we can overcome it relatively quickly. But it's just the diligence that you've shown to create those convenience traits. This will be just exactly like that.
Very good. Well, we are coming up on an hour very fast, so we very much appreciate everyone from taking some time out of their evening to join with us. Team members, do you have any closing comments while we wait to see if there's one or two more questions that come in on the chat box that folks want to ask?
I would just like to say that we appreciate you as breeders. We enjoy the opportunity to come and visit your place and to get to know your customers and you better. The future for Red Angus is absolutely unlimited at this point in time. Export markets opening up, the carcass quality that our cattle have, the maternal traits that we have, and the progress that the breed has made thanks to people that were instrumental in starting this organization and this association back in the 1950s to staff all the way through that time period. It's a real pleasure, at least from my standpoint, to work for you.
One last final question. Which is more important, phenotype or EPDs?
Both. I would always say both. I mean, I have a background in breeding and genetics, and I'm also a livestock judger, but I would never really place one over the other because I think they're both so important. Because if you get too focused on the numbers, I think we run into the problems that Harold was talking about with feet and legs. But if you only focus on phenotype, obviously you're losing out on a lot of performance that can be gained from, focusing on EPD. So I would always say focus on both and have a balance in how you select your bulls.
And Cody has posed the question, do you see a growth in the registered female base? And if so, where are the fastest growing areas? I think we are seeing a growth in those areas, and I'll just continue with that. And I don't know that we can probably break it down, but we are seeing we're seeing our THR numbers grow. So there's some historic benchmarks that's coming up. So we are seeing more females in our system. So the short answer is yes, that we are seeing that growth in that registered female base. And we'll have to dig around and get as far as that regional area for you to break that down, because we don't have those right there at our fingertips.
Right. We usually do that year in review article that I think is I believe it's in the September.
That's correct.
ARA magazine, and that'll have that.
Very good. Since I've got you there again, Harold, this will be our last question of the evening before we close things out. What kind of disposition issues were observed this year on the bull sale trail?
I didn't see any huge disposition. I mean, I didn't see any man eaters, but I think there's just a concern among the commercial ranchers as they get older. There's a lot of 65-year-old guys out there running a lot of cows with their wives, and they just want them a little bit calmer. And that's what's drawn them to Red Angus, is that we are a calmer breed than almost any other out there. And I think that they want us to just continue to be cognizant of that and pursue that. But as far as disposition, I mean, you're always going to have a hot one. I'm talking about when we're out in the pens looking around. It's pretty rare to have one that you really keep your eye on. You guys do an outstanding job of getting those out of there before we get there, and we appreciate it.
I was going to say, and that is not lost on the marketing team. No fence crawling required. So again, we want to thank everyone for taking some time to participate in listening to what the marketing team has observed the past year, and Katie, for your work with some of that data, crunching those price correlations. I think you'll find some interesting stuff there. The PDF of this presentation and the slides are now available on the front page of the website. So if you'd like to digest that a little bit more in your easy chair, feel free to do so. Again, you can reach out to Katie, Harold, or Gary on the marketing team with any questions that you might have. Their emails are pretty easy, with just being their first names, although Katie yours is Katie Ochsner at redangus.org, but we're pretty easy to get a hold of, and our contact information is on the website, so feel free to do that. As a reminder, coming in September, we'll have our national convention in Colorado Springs, and on that Wednesday, as historical and the tradition, we'll have the Commercial Cattlemen Symposium to kick off that event on Wednesday, September 13th. And we've got a really good program lined up with that, and hope that we can see many of you folks in person in Colorado Springs later this summer. So with that, we'll sign off and see you guys down the road.